Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. I'm trying my best to keep my arms to my side because I haven't shaved under my arms and I don't think I'm going to shave under my arms anytime soon. I don't think I'm going to shave any part of my body anytime soon. The wax lady needs to open because shaving is the ghetto. Don't know if I've ever told y'all that, but shaving is definitely the ghetto, especially for a black woman. It just darkens all your intimate areas and that's not what we want. I have shaved twice during this quarantine and now my once, smooth, one-colored kitty cat is now a bit, she's a bit tanned and that's not what I want. Like, I want my kitty cat to be the same color as me. But anyways, guys, I feel like I should just jump straight into it. I just want to jump straight into it, guys, because I've been telling you guys that I was going to review this book for a very long time. But here I am, weeks later, and I am going to review the Book of Night Women by Marlon James. Can y'all see that? The Book of Night Women by Marlon James. Now, this might be a ranty sort of lecture-y sort of review. You know what I mean? Because I've got a lot to say about this book because I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but my least favorite sort of book is a book about slavery, especially a fictional book about slavery, because I just feel like those sort of narratives, slave narratives, are extremely traumatic, especially for Black readers, and it doesn't provide that escapism that I'm trying to promote via my YouTube channel. And I feel like Black readers have to be very careful when it comes to the sort of books they pick up and the sort of information they digest. If you've got a healthy relationship with reading and you know that you can read to escape from anything that's going on in life, you can read romance, you can read fantasy, you can read contemporary, like you can read any genre and feel like you're able to enjoy it, then by all means, slave narrative yourself away, because I feel like if you know that reading is a solid for you and you can read anything and everything and like you just take the book for what it is, then do that. However, if you are just starting out, if you don't read that often, I feel like you should pick your books very wisely, because it's very easy for you to read one bad book or read even half a book or a quarter of a book and be like, yeah, reading is not for me. And that is not what we want. Now, the Book of Night Women is beautifully written. I have to give it to Marlon James. Like, there are many there's a reason why he has won so many awards for all of his work, and he won an award for his first book, and he won many awards for his first book, but he won the Man Booker for his first book, so you know that he's of high quality literary fiction and just high quality writing, and I love high quality writing, and that is one thing I absolutely loved about this book, is that the writing was fantastic. However, I was just I feel like it was like quite exhausting reading this book, because as I said, it's a slave narrative and I feel like I have quite a healthy relationship with reading. However, over consuming slave narratives went south for me before. When I was at university, and obviously I studied English and American literature, and when you study a lot of American literature, especially when you study colonial literature, when you study travel writing, and when you study like all these sort of things, you learn a lot about African Americans, you learn a lot about slavery through the books that you read for your course or your module. So when I was at university, I fell out of love with reading. I'm not gonna lie. I read so many traumatic books about slavery, about civil rights, about colorism, about police brutality. I read so many books like that literally, after I graduated university, I did not read for a solid year. Like, I tried to read, but I did not read for a solid year. And obviously that hurt me, because I'm a reader, I like reading, but I just didn't feel like it was a safe space. I didn't feel like it was a safe space anymore. So I had to really build myself back up. And when I got into publishing, I was obviously given a lot of different books. And for a while, I just went on a tangent and read everything and anything just sort of avoiding a lot of sensitive, traumatic topics that I just don't want to deal with. So I've got mixed emotions about the Book of Night Women, because whilst it was beautifully written, like Marlon James, baby, the book is beautifully written. I cannot fault it there. And I also cannot fault the fact that it's heavy, and the fact that it's a slave narrative, and that it explores a lot of deep topics. I cannot fault that. But for myself, for my mental health, for my emotional stability, I just won't be reading another book like this for a while. I feel like you should read a book like this every 6 months or every year. You do not read these on a regular basis. And this book was recommended to me by someone who said that it was the best book that he's ever read. And I completely understand that, because the book is fantastic. Like, the book is actually fantastic. Just a brief overview. It follows the life of a mixed race slave, who you don't really find out is mixed race until like chapter 5, but hey, it follows the life of a mixed race slave on a plantation in Jamaica during the 18th century. And obviously it's a lot of slavery, there's a lot of rape, there's a lot of murdering, there's just a lot going on in this book. And I felt like the main character, whose name is Lilith, I did not like that babe. I didn't like her. And the thing is, before I found out she was mixed race, one thing that Marlon James did very well was sort of portraying her to be extremely entitled and thinking that she's better than everyone. So when I found out that she was mixed race, and then obviously you know the thing about colorism and house slaves and field slaves, like you know all of that sort of business. When I found out that she was mixed race, I was like, for that time, it makes sense, because she is hard to digest. Like, Lilith is one of those people that you just want to shake and shake and shake and shake and shake and shake and just be like, bitch, sort yourself out. Sort yourself out. Like, don't make me slap you. Don't make me slap you. But she's just that babe. Like, she's not a likable character. And even as the book goes on, you're kind of waiting and just being like, oh, okay, maybe I'll start to like her once she starts to see that the white man sees her as black, and she needs to have more allegiance to black people than having, like, she has this sort of want to be with white men, to feel like she's better than the other slaves. And it's just not. The thing is, that character on the backdrop, like on the slavery backdrop, is extremely difficult to digest, because you're just looking at her like, I just don't like you, baby. I don't like you, and I don't like this book. No, I don't like this book, but I don't like what this book is about. So now you're making it difficult, because I would be so, I feel like I'd enjoy the book a bit more, or I'd feel a bit better reading the book if Lilith was a nice character, but she isn't. But it's all about her, plantation, slavery. Obviously, a lot of things happen, like, one thing that happens, obviously, Lilith is raped multiple times by white men. She is taken in by one of the slave overseers, who is an Irishman. And it's a very sort of convoluted, weird relationship between them two, because I would say that it was love, but they weren't allowed to be in love. But then it was also a very toxic version of love, because he is a slave master and she is a slave, and it's never going to happen. Whether oh, my belly's growling. Whether it's just the weirdest thing. It's the weirdest thing. Like, I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, no, not oh, like, but oh. You know what I mean? Like, in this book, when it comes to her relationship with the Irishman, whose name is Robert Quinn. His name is Robert Quinn. His name is Robert Quinn, and it's just like, it's difficult, because it's like, you don't like Lilith because Lilith's a bitch. You don't like the white people in the book because they're racist, and they're obviously there in Jamaica and there's a lot of slavery. And then it's on It's set on a slavery backdrop with all this sort of black magic obia. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, I had to read this book whilst listening to gospel. That is it. I had to read this book while listening to gospel, because when they were talking all this, like in this book, there's a lot of black magic. And for me, like, I don't really believe in that kind of stuff, because I'm thinking there's darkness and then there's light, which is God, but I don't really focus on the darkness because I'm on God's side. So reading this book, it made me extremely uncomfortable, because I was just like, oh my God, like, there are a lot of unlikable characters in this book. Loads. And not only the white characters, but the black characters as well, including Lilith, who is the main character. But for me, I felt like, because I found Lilith really difficult to digest and tolerate, I started focusing on the bigger topics at hand. Topics such as slavery, topics that basically explore the sexual injustice of black women dating back to slavery, even happening now, the fact that black women have been denied sensuality and vulnerability. Because throughout this book, even though all these terrible things happen to Lilith and as well as the other characters, she prides herself on her strength. And a bit of it is like, oh, fantastic, like, she's a strong character, like, she's gonna make it to the end, it's not gonna be a terrible ending. But as another side of it, it's just like, damn, ma. Another part of it just makes me feel a certain type of way. I'm not gonna lie, like, it's difficult to explain, because, guys, the book is beautifully written. And it's beautifully written, but it's a heavy book. Like, it's not a bedtime book. It's not a bedtime book. I'm telling you, this is a book that you read when you're studying a university degree, an English literature degree or a history degree, because it is historical fiction. It's very literary, and it teaches you a lot through a fictional lens about slavery, in the Caribbean, specifically Jamaica, during the 18th century. And one thing that really struck me about this book, like the name itself, I'm going to tell you guys a secret, and I don't want anyone to judge me. The secret is that I do not read blurbs. I don't like reading blurbs. And when I go shopping for books, or when someone recommends a book, all I want to know is whether you think it's good or not. That's all I want to know, because I feel like blurbs give too much away. And if I'm reading a book, I don't like to know a lot. I just want to know that it's good, and I'll give it a whirl. And if it's good, I'll tell you that it's good. If it's bad, I say that I disagree. So I didn't read the blurb for this book. I just bought it blindly based on someone's recommendation, and that person saying that it was a fantastic book. From the title, which for me drew likeliness to a book that I mentioned, I can't see it there, a book that I mentioned my very first video on YouTube, which was the Book of Negroes by Lawrence Matthews. The title for me was very similar. So I had in mind that this book was going to be about slavery. So when I opened it and the book was about slavery, I was just like, damn, ma, like, I felt so well read in that moment. I was like, yeah, I can tell that it's about slavery. And I would say that the Book of Night Women and the Book of Negroes I would say that they were probably happening side by side. Like, it was like a parallel. Like, this is happening in Jamaica and the Caribbean, and the Book of Negroes is happening in Africa, and then obviously the United States. And it's all about slavery, like slave trade, colonial empire, all of it in there. So I obviously love the Book of Negroes, but I felt like the Book of Negroes had a bit more of an upbeat side to it, whereas this one is very, very, very dark. And I understand it, because there's a leitmotif of darkness throughout the entire book, and darkness is always mentioned. It was difficult to read for me, because I don't want to hear about black women being raped. I don't want to hear about slavery. I don't want to hear about black people being killed. But here I am reading about it willingly. I will not be doing this again for a while. I don't like this shit. I don't. But I want to say this, whilst I don't know whether I'm actually encouraging people, I'm folding my legs, by the way. I don't know whether I'm encouraging people to read this book or I'm discouraging people to read this book. I'm just saying that if you want to read it, then I would say read it. It's beautifully written. I have a terrible relationship with slave narratives simply because that was one of the many reasons as to why I stopped reading for a year after I had graduated university. I also feel like they're traumatic. With that being said, they're traumatic for Black readers. I feel like they're terribly important for white readers or readers who are non-Black, because they teach you about slavery, they teach you about brutality, they teach you about all these different things pertaining to Black bodies, Black lives, and Black bodies, Black lives, Black rights. It's weird because when she so there's a part in the book where she accidentally spills soup, multiple bowls of soup on a white woman. And because of that, she receives, I believe it's like 50 lashes a day for a week. And this is ordered by another white woman who isn't the mistress of that plantation, but is there. Isabel, okay. Let me not go into Isabel because I feel I'll leave that for you guys. If you want to read this book, you'll learn about Isabel yourself. She's weird. So she receives all these lashes, and obviously her back is just torn up. It's torn up. Her back is torn up. And after that, they basically ship her off to a different, it wasn't even like a plantation. They ship her off to a different estate where she is meant to be seasoned. And obviously, I'm going to put up what seasoning means and what seasoning is. And I'm also going to link a article relating to seasoning because I went off and read some articles just around this and some essays around seasoning and slavery and stuff like that. So they ship her off to a different estate to be seasoned at Isabel's request, who is a white woman in the book. And a lot of terrible things happen to Lilith at this other estate. But one thing that really got me is that they introduce a character by the name of Dulcima, aka Dulcie. And when you first meet Dulcie, like when I first read about Dulcie, I was just like, shit, Dulcie's a breath of fresh air. Dulcie is what this book needs. I hope Dulcie remains. And then a couple pages later, she's dead. And I was just there like, Marlon, give us a break, please. We're tired. We are very, very tired of all the darkness in your book and that everyone's dying and that Black people are not surviving. But yeah, Dulcie dies, and then obviously Lilith is still at this estate, and she's treated poorly. And you know, like the master of that house, of the estate, he's a perv. He's a sexual deviant. So that really upset me. The mistress of the house, she is a bitch. There's no other way to put it. She's a bitch. And Isabel, she is a head bitch. And basically Lilith is not treated nicely. And what ends up happening is that, as I said, there's a lot of obeah, there's a lot of darkness. And for me, I actually didn't know, for a long time, I didn't know whether what Lilith was seeing when she referred to the dark woman, which is basically a figure that appears to her in darkness when she's sleeping, all that kind of stuff. Sorry. I didn't know for a long time whether this figure was real. And for me, I was always confused. Like, is it like it? What is it? Is it a real thing? Like, I don't know. Is it her subconscious? I didn't know. But she's visited by the dark woman, and who basically, I guess, predicts what's going to happen. And she predicts that Lilith is going to kill the master of the estate by basically crushing his chest 7 times, and basically when she's drowning him in the water. So what happens is that she ends up killing everyone on that estate, and she ends up getting away with it because the slaves are blamed. The slaves who had been there before her was blamed. She burns down the entire estate with the kids there. And you know, one thing, it's difficult to enjoy because you're tied between feeling like you hate all the slave masters, you hate all the white people in the book, but then also like some of the things that happen aren't right, whether the characters are white or black. Do you know what I mean? I felt like I was just always tied, like, I hate these people in the book, but then also they're human beings, but also black people are human beings and they're treating black people like that. And I just felt like it was too much questioning. I didn't like it. I don't like that for myself. I don't like that for myself. But yeah, so she ends up burning down this entire state and she gets away with it. But one thing that really perplexed me is that, and she loves that word, perplexed, is that she burns down the estate with babies in the house, and that really upset me because I was just like, and that upset her as well because she's haunted by the fact that she has killed children. Isabel also not there, so she doesn't die, but Isabel basically has like a nervous breakdown, a mental breakdown after the death of her family. And she then moves on they then move back to the Humphrey Wilson, whatever, the Wilson estate, and are there permanently. But it's just a weird book, guys. Like, I wish I could be explaining this better. I feel like I want some of you guys to go off and read this book and come back to me and discuss it with me, because I have mixed feelings. I love the book because it's beautifully written, and I just feel like Marlon James is a genius and he knows his craft. And I like him. He's Jamaican, so I like him. But then I just feel like there are a lot of heavy topics throughout this book. But one thing that I really, really appreciate about this book is that there are a lot of instances throughout the book where reading and being able to write is promoted to be a good thing, and is promoted to be closely linked to freedom. So obviously a lot of all slaves, no one was allowed to read back in the day. Reading was seen as a white thing, but Lilith learns to read. And for me, that was a beautiful, freeing moment. And I feel like I liked her better when she was humble, and Lilith. I liked her better when she was humble and that she wasn't giving cheats to people who were trying to help her. So yeah, I'm tied. I'm just a bit about this book, because I started this channel because I want people to read. I want people to form a healthy relationship with reading before they even try to tackle books like this. So if you're an avid reader, if you don't mind reading slave narratives, then please, I do urge you to read this book. However, if you're just starting out, put it on pause. Don't buy this book yet. And we'll build you up, and we'll read some other books, some nice books, and then we'll come back to this one, and then we can go over it, and then we can talk about it again then. But yeah, guys, the Book of Night Women, like, there's a lot that happens. I'm trying to cut back on the amount of information that I actually share whilst recording videos about books when I'm doing a review, because I feel like I explained the book from beginning to end. Well, the last reviews that I've done explained it from beginning to end. So the Book of Night Women, I like it. Well written, literary, historical fiction, which is my favourite genre. Doing a lot, but I'm at the end of my review, sort of like it's just difficult to come and rant about these sort of books because they're just I don't know. I just don't know how I feel about it. I just know that it's a beautifully written book. I know that Marlon James is very much so talented. I know that I wouldn't mind reading his other work, and I feel like I am going to go back and read his first book, which I think it's A Brief History of 7 Killings. I'm gonna have to put that up properly. But I just don't do slave narratives. But if you are into slave narratives, then I think that you should go out and you should read this book, and that you should let me know what you think. And if you've read the book already, I need you to comment below, and I want to have a discussion, because it's unsettling. The book is unsettling, to say the least. And Lilith, I don't like that babe. And there isn't a point that I like her in the book. And I don't feel like it takes away anything from the book. It doesn't take away any sort of value from the book, but it just makes me think. It just makes me feel a type of way. Every time she just makes me feel a type of way. Oh, wish I liked her. It's a heavy book. It's a heavy book. It's a heavy book. I loved it, but it was such a heavy book, and it makes it difficult for me to want to recommend it, because unlike the Book of Negroes, which progressed, like it got progressively better, because the protagonist in that book was, first of all, she was likable. She was around the same age as Lilith when it begun, but the book saw her through in her entire life, and she did something good, and she fought for her freedom. You know what it is, and this is, what it is. The Book of Negroes, this is one criticism that it received from, I can't remember who it was, because it's been a long time since I read that book. It's been a long time since I've written an essay on it. But that book got a lot of criticism for being unrealistic, because the ending was very, very optimistic, as in girl, Africa, slave, rape, a lot of this stuff, finds her child that was sold off, somehow fights for her freedom, goes to do all these fantastic things. And now that I'm looking back at it, unrealistic. And this book is, I guess, a bit more realistic, but it's just very, very dark. I think for me, the black magic / obia in it was a bit too much for me. It made me feel uncomfortable. As I said, I had to read this book whilst listening to music. Gospel music. It's a heavy book. It's a heavy book, but I need you guys to comment below if you've read the book. And if you have, then let me know your thoughts, because as a black woman, obviously living in the 20th century, I've read a lot of these books. I've read a lot of these books before, and it doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't sit well with me at all, reading about my ancestors, despite it being through a fictional lens, reading about black women being raped and being gang raped as well, and their bodies being disrespected, and them just having to be strong, which is still a narrative now, and them being denied vulnerability, and then being denied sensuality, and all these things that I feel like are very, very important. And I feel like this is just like an educational video, really. I'm going to link some articles below. I'm also probably going to have you put one here and put one there. I'm good at that now. And I like editing things in. So I'm probably going to do that. But yeah, guys, I don't know if there's much more that I can say about this. Let me know if you've read it. Read it if you want to read it, and if you feel like you can read something like this without it kind of bringing you down. It brought me down a bit. And then we can discuss this a bit more. But for now, I will catch you guys in the next video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Can you guys share my videos? When I get to 5,000 subscribers, I am doing a big book bundle giveaway. So if you get me to 5,000, you could be in for a chance of winning loads and loads of books. Thank you for watching, guys. It's always love, and I appreciate you guys immensely. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.